Welcome in, folks. This whole thing's about to kick off here. You're going to go live 10 minutes before. I did finally grab a new small tripod here, so I'm going to try to put my light on it over here a little bit. What's up, everybody? We got to start nice and early. What up, Jesse? We got Avid the Spoonlady coming in here in just one moment, folks. We'll be doing a little Hobo History lesson for everybody, including myself. I got a lot to learn myself. I got to find a better spot to put this here light. Okay, let's go for a walk, shall we? It was the pizza man the whole time. Got my headlamp too. I wanted to sort all this out too. I wanted to sort all this out before the live started. Before it began. Oh, hi there. I'm gonna put the light here. Oh, that's way better. Okay, let's turn it up a smidge more. I got a full charge on that bad Larry. Oh yeah, that's good. I grab my water and stuff here. My camera bag. I can leave my pack over there. Put my bungee cord on top. I don't want to lose that. I've had that bungee cord since like California. 2 years now. A long-lasting bungee cord. They don't make them like they used to. They don't make them like they used to make them. Yeah, that's not bad. It's not bad at all. God, it is great out here. We got train tracks right behind me here. I see an Amtrak, maybe a freight train. There's only a couple that pass through a day, it seems, or what I've been told. A lot of Amtraks, though. We're due for another one here soon. Hey, I truly hope you're doing well yourself. Yeah, we got and this really coming in any moment. So I have the Hobo History lesson for this week. Next week, we're going to try to do it again over the red play button app. But this week, we're trying to do it on here. I just want to check my headphone. I just want to check my headphone real quick. I'm still reading out of this thing, but let me back you guys up a little so I can get closer to this light here. Oh yeah, that's good. That's beautiful. Just like perfection. But thank you, Pizza Hut. Appreciate you. Houdini with the shares, much appreciated. I put that thing in the mod section on the Discord. If anyone disrespects Abby, I don't care how long they fucking been here for. If anyone remotely disrespects Abby, that's a ticket to the door. Whatever, like people make jokes. We got weird sense of humor. Obviously, don't be too strict on that. But if people start arguing in the comment section while me and Abby are talking, just let them go to help engagement, help me and Abby's platform grow. If it becomes a major distraction and it's taking away from the live, like it becomes too much, then to start axing motherfuckers. But yeah, we'll looking for engagement first if we can. What up, Mustang? Hell yeah, truly. Yeah, beautiful night here out in Milwaukee, right in downtown Milwaukee. Oh, downtown Milwaukee's over here. Let me show you. But downtown Milwaukee's right back there, just over the river. But I got this cool Milwaukee sign right here. Ride a bike around Milwaukee, it says, but it is a beautiful sign. Reminds me of the Super 8 signs you find in the motel rooms. That's some abandoned building or some building under construction, I'm not sure. But I got a train track in front of me that's for industry. If I will see any action there, I got two main lines behind me. I will probably see a freight train come by or even Amtrak. That's the word. I don't take them that much. I forgot. Oh, Houdini, you're new here? Fuck yeah. Houdini, thank you, brother. Um, might be engaged to a box of donuts. That totally counts, man. Love is love. Love is love. But I got plenty of spots to camp. I was in the camp right where I was on this electrical box here, but on that side. But the sun's coming up from the east, and that's right there. So as soon as that sun comes up, it's right in my face. I did this drink of coffee in between the two lives to make sure I had enough pep in my step for this live. So there's plenty of woods back over this way, and the other way. So I'll find a spot back there. Make sure I got a nice tree shading me in the morning. Maybe sleep until like 8 rather than waking up at 5:30. You know. What's this live about? Dude loses his mind, travels the country. Um, oh, true Pizza Hound. You know, I already mourned for your loss. Cuddling. Jen with the hi friend. Thank you very much. And we got Abby coming in any minute now. We agreed on starting at 9, but yeah, I think we're gonna co-host from the same live. Unless there was, I went back and forth like 3 times with it. So if Abby thinks that she needs to go live, let's invite her in. But I think it'd be better like Jan that was in here. Jan's too. I think it was a good idea to have all the chat in one spot. So you guys can riff off each other while we're rambling on and on. But yeah, I'm excited for this. We don't really do stuff like this. We don't really co-host, to be honest with you. And usually I look at co-host as like a opportunity for dread. Ugh. Social, being social on the internet. But I'm excited for this one. And Abby's always amazing to talk to. What's up, Abby? Let's have you join in here whenever you're ready. No rush at all. No rush at all. Um, I figure we told everybody 9. People start rolling through here soon. It looks like the live's starting off a little slower than normal, probably because I just went live. I thought that would help, but it might have worked against us. But I'm sure people start rolling in once we start getting going. Yeah, let's have you join this one so we get the chat in one spot. If that's cool with you, Abby. If you want to do anything else, man, I'm down. But I figure that'd be best just to have one chat for everybody rather than having 2 separate chats on 2 different sides. But again, if you want to do some other way, let me know. Open to ideas. Join just a check. I didn't mean to mispronounce that. You take your time, no problem at all. We'll be talking about Hobo history. Looks like we're going to start right after the Civil War era, going into how people started hopping trains, why they started hopping trains. I have no idea what we're in for. Like, I'm getting an education along with you guys. This is mutually beneficial on all accounts. But service seems like it's good on my end. Let me know if I start lagging or anything like that. What up, Katie? You're handsome. You're handsome. Let me know if you see any lag or anything like that. No. I'm trying a different spot over here. Seems like I got better service just 20 feet from here. So we can do that if we have to. You know. Still going live with Abby. Yeah, we're gonna start up any second here now. Abby's just taking a quick second before she joins. I told her no rush. So, I mean, no matter what, we're not gonna really get going until like 9:05, 9:10. We told everybody 9. Some people show up late. I don't know if people missed the beginning. I haven't talked to Abby about this yet, but most likely one of us or no, both of us will post this on the Red Play Button app when it's done. Yeah. Hell yeah, Katie. Yeah, it's my first time doing an event, a live event. I've never done one before, like through the app. But I ended up, I set a reminder over the weekend. I set a reminder yesterday. I set one this morning and then one this evening. So actually, I think another reminder is about to go off on my phone. I might interrupt the live. But me and Abby, the Spoonlady, we going over Hobo history, and it's more Abby going over Hobo history while I ask questions and get an education myself. What up, Dee Dee? I am excited. I'm excited. I don't really do co-hosts and stuff like that. It's not really our MO over here. But whenever I do, or I'm doing a guest spot or something like that, I'm usually pretty nervous or anxious about it. I'm just excited for this. I'm super excited for this. What up, Pugsley? How you doing? Gonna be great. I think so too. So grab your favorite adult bevy, magic cabbage, or snack, or all 3, and settle in to hear some hobo history here on TikTok. Unprecedented on this app, by the way. This is unprecedented on TikTok. So let's fucking do it. Oh, Abby's amazing. Abby's amazing. The popcorn, the beverage ready. Hell yeah. I was gonna grab a sixer, but I was like, I can just do that tomorrow. I don't want to get sloppy by the end of the live. It's just like in case it goes longer than we planned on. And I was like, hey, so what happens after that? I'm like, you know what? We'll just give the liver a break. Um, I got a couple of pints throughout the day. I had two. One at the where Pabst Blue Ribbon started, and the other one at the oldest brewery here in Milwaukee, Lakefront. Kelly was nice enough to give me a tour of the area, and it was a fucking awesome tour. Um, I'm not sure, TT. I have the intro done and a little bit of the video done. It won't take more than 2 or 3 hours to finish the rest of that video up, so I can do that whenever. But I don't want to have too much going on all at the same time. And I'm promoting the outreach and I'm promoting this, and I don't want to start working a premiere into that as well. Plus, the last video I put out, the people that pay for memberships over on the Red Play Button app, like they didn't get a chance to watch the video ahead of time at all because they did everything last minute. So this next one, I want to finish it, publish it, promote it for like 3 or 4 days. Not consistently and constantly, just put it out there. Oh, we got Abby coming in. Everyone welcome in Abby the Spoonlady in the flesh. There we go. I got to make it bigger somehow. I don't know how to do any of this. We're going to figure it out as we go. What's up, Abby?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. It's going good. I'm trying
I'm
to figure
getting
out how to make you a little bit bigger than this little square down here.
it.
And apparently I did not do that. I put makeup on myself instead.
Denny, Denny, don't be loud. How
Denny's
is
just saying hi
everybody?
to me. I haven't seen Denny in quite some time.
Denny, everyone's scared now. So,
You've scared the whole live. I'm
everyone's.
doing well, Abby. How have you been?
I've been okay. How is everybody?
Yeah, how's the
You're
cat?
in Milwaukee?
Yeah, I'm in Milwaukee right now. Beautiful place. Like no one seems to care that I'm like camping out on this bridge up here.
Hey, stop it. This dog.
All right, I
Oh,
made you big, but I made me small. We're gonna get there. It's gonna take a moment.
there's gotta be a balance, right?
Right, there's gonna be an in between somewhere. My inexperience co-hosting is showing right now.
Yeah, I'm
Is,
not good at this either.
yeah, do we have any adults in the chat that know how to do this stuff that can direct me in the right direction here?
Hey, everybody.
This is definitely something I should have practiced before the live.
Nope. Not at all.
Yeah, foresight. I don't know what
Not
that
a
is.
single adult.
All right, let me try this. Sorry to make your head giant again.
Oh, you're good.
And then
Guest settings. Here's one.
oh, guest settings. I don't see guest anywhere. Guest settings. Okay, I'm with you. Ah, who said that? Jeremy, thank you. All right.
Yay! Jeremy's awesome.
Good. Ah, look at that. Look at that. This is
We
beautiful.
won. We're
We
winning.
did it. So now that we did that, that's the end of the live, everybody. Thank you for joining. It's all we want to do is figure that one thing out. Just have the spoon lady, make sure you give her a follow. You guys have a great night. Be good. Be good at it. Abby, so good to talk to you again, homie. We haven't seen each other. Last time I was out your way was a year ago. A year and a couple of weeks now. It's gone by so quick.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, and you know how it is when folks come see me, it's like the moment that somebody says anything about anything historical or anything that reminds me of anything historical, I just kind of go on a rant.
I feel like I went to hobo camp. I swear, like every day, especially towards the night, it was like, "Have you seen this movie? Have you heard about this story?" You're cracking books open, and there's a lot of information to take in all at once. So, like my primitive brain only caught bits and pieces of it.
There's a lot of it. Yeah, and you don't realize like just how rich. that history is until you really kind of dig into it. And so what we're talking about here, and just to make it clear, and a few disclaimers too. Um, this isn't a political talk that we're having here, but politics does play a part in history. So, no one here, like, we're not advocating for any kind of this or that with present day politics, but this is history. So, that's it. History is history. That being said, I don't do like weird history revisionism. I don't. And we can talk about it. If people have questions about something, like if you don't agree with something I'm saying, just be polite about it and we'll have a discussion. Um,
Civil discourse with emphasis
yeah,
on the
civil
civil. Yeah.
discourse. Right. Yeah, that's the best way to do it.
There's some people asking in the chat, are you in an active pew pew fight right now, or is that
No,
fireworks?
no, it's fireworks. I'm in rural Kansas. They'll be blowing them off all summer. All summer.
um, so like I learned a lot about hobo history when I first started hopping trains, mainly from older train riders and people that run certain conventions around parts of the country and all that. Not to single
Right.
any one group out. And come to find out, it was all bullshit. So I need a re-education, 100%. Because like when I said, I feel like I went to hobo camp. All the information you were giving me, you had sources and books and receipts for everything. Like you are a hobo historian.
Okay, so the idea that we have about the American hobo is very Americanized for I think that's the best word I know. But yeah, it's all kind of underneath this banner of American individualism. And we do the same thing like to cowboys as an example or to miners, there wasn't a such thing as a lone cowboy. That wasn't something that really existed. They worked in teams. When we talk about gold miners, it wasn't some guy panning for gold and all of a sudden he's rich. No, there were miners involved. Like it was a team effort. And we did the same thing with the American hobo. It was a team effort. These folks traveled in groups. They camped in groups. They had group projects. It was a group effort. Um, and so we have this idea of, the lone hobo going down the tracks, jug of red will let his head and a loaf of bread or whatever.
A stick in a bindle with a bandana, holding everything they own.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily accurate. And we also think about the height of the American hobo being the Great Depression, which there was a lot of people on the rails, and it also changed the makeup of the folks on the rails. There were a lot more families during that time. But the height of hobos and the height of hobohemia, which we'll get to in a second, was more like around the turn of the century, 1900 through 1920 or so. Not necessarily the Great Depression, and especially when we're talking about hobohemia, which is the culture itself that came out of it. I, I guess is the best way I know how to put that.
Like the evolution of a culture from that kind of thing.
Right. So, yeah. So when we think about the American hobo, we have the general idea of what is the migratory worker. You know what I mean?
The
Yeah.
quintessential hobo.
Yeah, yeah. He's the fruit laborer. He's the guy. He's on the road for a year to make some money to buy a farm or whatever he wants to. If that's something he wants, whatever people's reasons were. Some people weren't on the road actually very long. Maybe a year, maybe a few months, maybe for a season for something. Um, but connected with that, the migratory workforce was something that kind of came out of that, which was hobohemia, so to speak. And when we talk about hobohemia, we talk about the culture that kind of came with that, and a lot of like labor radicals would kind of fall underneath this umbrella. A lot of hobos of America hobos, which is separate from labor radicals, would fit underneath this umbrella. And so
So what would you
uh,
say the difference between the hobo and hobohemia would be? Because I had a complete misunderstanding of that. You had to correct me the other day.
Well, okay, so like today, we'll run into folks who are on the rails or hitchhiking and traveling place to place that know nothing about traveling culture whatsoever. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I
Um,
mean? Like a lot of us know each other. It's you know what I mean? We start to use the same kind of lingo. We start to
right.
understand the same kind of talk.
So
That's
like
where the idea of
travelers separate
homophobia
from the
comes in.
traveling community.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Not necessarily in a bad way, just not part of the culture.
No, no, not
Yeah.
in a bad way whatsoever. But that was something that was extremely more prominent back in that day. You know what I mean? Like, and like I said, just like today, hobos weren't a political monolith either. You know what I mean? So you had right wing and left wing factions of hobos back then. And the line was very, very stark. And then on top of that, you also had, the general idea of like the homeless population, which also interconnected with homophobia and the migratory workforce, but is also a separate thing. You know
Okay.
what I mean?
Okay.
So just so we understand what all we're talking about. So, like, hobohemia, what would fall underneath that umbrella would be things like the hobo colleges, the hobo newspapers, branches of the IWW and fights that the IWW were taking. The IWW being the industrial workers of the world. Um, And then, you also had underneath this umbrella were kind of like the hobos of America hobos, which were not radical in any way,
Are
shape,
there
or form.
still train riders like in the IWW? Like, is that still a moving force at all within like train hoppers and hitchhikers and travelers?
I don't know if I would consider it a moving force. I I'm a wobbly. I pay dues. I know a handful that do. But at the time, and we'll get to it, at the time of the Palmer raids, the Wobblies were huge, and then the Palmer raids happened, or the first Red Scare, and that crushed the IWW. But we can get to that in
But
a
so,
minute.
wobblies are people in the IWW or people that
Yes,
advocate for it.
yes, that was shorthand for Wobblies, and the people, and it's so funny, the folks that didn't like Wobblies, the anti-radicals, the ones that would call them like dirty Bolsheviks and this and that. They would say IWW stands for I won't work. Poke fun at them that way. And it was the
I
same kind of stuff that they say today, the same kind of
Oh, it's the same argument. Yeah, same exact
same
argument, same exact
arguments that they
insults are thrown.
say about, unionized folks also. Um, but, uh, you know, you have to realize though, like at this time, like when we're talking about, if we go back to after the Civil War, so the war happens, we have mass devastation, we have a massive amount of homeless people wandering around the country. We have all freed slaves trying to find family members that they've been separated from, trying to find where they're supposed to be, trying to find home. We have
Displaced folks all over the country
everybody's
for a
displaced.
million different reasons. Yeah,
Yeah, and we had a lot of folks suffering from serious PTSD.
right, right.
Serious
Didn't even know what that was back then, right?
No, no. They called it soldier's heart.
And then
That's
later
what they
on, they
called
called it shell shock, and then eventually actually
it.
turned it
Yeah, at the
into a
time though, they
diagnosis.
called
But
it soldier's heart.
soldier's heart,
Um,
okay.
right, right, right. And there's a really great. I wish I had brought it out. I brought some books out on the porch with me. There's a really great set of writings from this guy called Roving Bill Aspinwall, and he was a Civil War Union vet and then a hobo, and he wrote all sorts of stuff. He had a pen pal that was a university professor, and all of his letters and stuff were saved. So
Well,
And
that's
he was
beautiful
a
too, because he
hobo, like
wasn't
a
writing
real
for
early
mass
hobo.
consumption. Like he wasn't writing for the world to see it. He was just writing for
No,
what with his
and
buddies to see
his
it.
stuff
Yeah.
is fascinating to go through. So that's a really great book if you want a reference to that very specific time frame. You
So
know,
this is like the start of train hopping. This is the start of hobos. Is post Civil
but
War era.
hobos as we know them today, you know, because of course there were folks on the rails and traveling and bumming around, so to speak, before the Civil War. Of course, that was a thing. But the migratory workforce that we knew today really went into full gear when the East met the West with the railroad. You know, and we're talking, you know, the late 1800s. Finally, you could steadily get from coast to coast on the rails.
So at the end of the late 1800s, you had what 1896 was the Hobo Code of Ethics. Now, I do want to break everyone's heart today and talk about hoboglyphs later on, whenever like we can work that in. But is the Hobo Code of Ethics a real thing, or is that just another romance fantasy?
That's that. Okay, there's no actual documentation for that to ever have been a thing,
Okay,
and
okay.
and it predates Jeff Davis, and we'll get to him. So you know, but he definitely kind of stoked that idea. Jeff Davis did, and the whole you know, hobos work, tramps don't, bums can't thing. You know,
Right,
like
right.
that kind of
A way
thing.
to separate ourselves and divide ourselves within a small culture already.
Right, right. That was the more conservative side of Hobohemia. Um, yeah. So yeah,
So post Civil War, people are displaced from the war itself. People are starting to migrate for work. They have the east, coast to coast train lines now. When did it start becoming like more of a culture, and they started becoming more like working in teams and groups and stuff like that? Was that something that happened right after the war, or something that progressed slowly?
a lot of that came out of labor unrest that happened after the war. A really there. I mean, there was tons of labor unrest between the Civil War and you know through the turn of the century there, and especially like the 1870s, 1880s, 1890, we had the first American Great Depression, which caused upheaval around the country.
So what
Um,
is labor unrest? This like lack of work, and then civil unrest as a result of lack of work.
we're talking about strikes and labor struggles. So, you know, we have the founding of the Knights of Labor, which happens in like 1870 or so. And they were kind of like the precursor to the IWW a little bit. You know, and we had the Long Depression and the early railroad strikes. You know, so the railroads started to kind of crumble once East met West. They had built all this track and all this track and all this track, and they didn't need it anymore. And so they were kind of getting all this money from the government, and eventually they started crashing when they couldn't get that money anymore.
Oh, okay,
Um,
okay.
you know, it's you know we have the tech bros now. They had the railroad bros then. You know what I mean? That's kind of the way it was. But yeah, in 1877 we had the Great Railroad Strike, which was the first nationwide strike, and it was triggered by rate wage cuts for the B&O Railroad. And martial law was declared in multiple states. Over 100 people were unalived, and it was a complete defeat for workers. But you know, out of this kind of stuff, you know, and then the Haymarket massacre, which is a huge one.
Oh,
Um,
where was that now? Where was the Haymarket massacre
the
done?
Haymarket affair was 1886, and it first started like the day before the incident happened. There was a strike at the McCormick plant in Chicago, and a bunch of really bad stuff goes down at this strike in Chicago, and some people are killed, unalived.
Make sure you follow Abby's backup account.
It's so hard to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, we gotta talk like children,
Right.
unfortunately.
So
Advertisement
they
friendly.
yeah, so they ended up calling for a meeting the next day, and at this meeting, a bunch of people come out, a bunch of police come out, and somebody, and nobody knows who till this day, threw a stick of dynamite into the crowd, and it hurt a bunch of people. And they ended up arresting like these eight anarchists, and I think the majority of them weren't even there. But out of this, I think three of them were pardoned. A few of them were killed. One guy lit a stick of dynamite in his mouth before they could sentence him.
Really?
Uh, but one of the men that was unalived, his wife, Lucy Parsons, his name was Albert Parsons, ended up going to start. She was one of the founding members of the IWW later in 1905. So like this is kind of setting the stage for that. So a lot of this kind of activism and stuff kind of came out of the massive amount of labor unrest. Because we're talking about the
I think you
Robert
showed me a
Ball era.
reenactment of Lucy Parsons speaking once, and it was even just the words alone were extremely powerful. But it's insane to me to think back in 1905 that not only would a woman take the reins in America at that time, was accepted as someone kind of running the show. It is beautiful within its own right there.
Yeah, there are a lot of really active women in the IWW. They were a union to encompass all. It didn't matter what race, religion, gender, and whether or not you were employed or unemployed. Because while a lot of unions were kind of focused on trade unionism, and they were a lot more white focused than say the IWW. And that the fact that the IWW was so open to everybody and actively translated their flyers and booklets and information in 30 plus languages all over the place is just really fascinating.
Super progressive for the time, especially.
Right. Well, it made it easier to actually organize because at a lot of those labor camps, and things like that, those bosses would separate races and cultures just to make them fight at each other or to make it harder for folks to unionize. Because you're not going to be pointing up if you're pointing at each other. You
Very
know,
similar to today.
exactly. And it's always been a fight. So like if we go back to the Haymarket affair, when they were killing those poor, when they were unaliving those poor young men, they were unaliving those poor young men. Um, there were quotes that you can find, or people saying, "Well, I came to watch the death of the labor movement." Folks knew that there was a growing movement for better pay, for I mean everything from child labor to better pay to the end of job sharking, which is a very specific thing, to just safety in the workplace. Let alone issues having to do with folks of color. I mean, oh my God, it
So they
was
wanted fair work conditions, include everybody, and to go home alive and safe. How dare
how
they?
radical of
How
them.
Yeah.
How
Oh,
radical are
goodness
they? Oh
gracious.
my gosh. They wanted 8 hours. Yeah, part of that was the fight for the 8 hour workday. That was a huge part of the Haymarket affair was the fight for the 8 hour workday. So, um,
Haymarket is in Chicago.
Haymarket is
This
in
is all
Chicago,
happening in Chicago.
right? And the McCormick plant is still there.
So speaking of Chicago, the Chicago fire that was blamed on the
On
working class and
tramps, but
the
yeah, it was blamed on hobos. Okay, so during that time also there's two different moral panics going on. One of them was the white slavery panic, which was, they were scared that women were being taken up by tramps and hobos on the rails and being trafficked and this and that. it wasn't really happening. Some women just wanted to travel. um, and they had, people would just like freak out about that stuff. It was a way to control women overall. There was a senator named Mann who was kind of behind a lot of legislation at the time having to do with that, and he was also kind of behind the America Plan, which also kind of pleased women. But we can get to that in a moment. And then the Great Tramp Scare was happening at the same time, which was fueled by that white slavery panic and other issues that were going on overseas, like the Paris Commune. So, do you know what the Paris Commune
I do not. I do not.
is? So, the Paris Commune was 1871, and pretty much, and when we say commune, that's what they called county at the time. So we're not talking about like an actual commune of like communists or something. It's what they
Like
did
the
for.
typical hippie commune you find in the '60s in a
Yeah, it's
movie.
not. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about county, right? So we're pretty much a lot of revolutionaries took over Paris, and from the bourgeoisie, and it was this big thing that they really really hammered out in the American newspapers about, look at this unrest that's happening in France. This could happen to us. Look at all these homeless people that we have. Look at all these vagrants. And then you started seeing a massive amount of scare stories, and a lot of them weren't even true. They would start with something like, "It is said, dot, dot, dot," and they would say this horrible tale about this tramp that come and stole someone's baby or something, something wild, or burnt somebody's farm down, or they would say, like, papers on one side of the country would say that tramps were taking over whole cities on the other side of the country, and vice versa, and it would make it seem like they were always coming for you next. Um,
I mean, to this day, I've only stolen 6 babies while traveling. But in my defense, I was extremely hungry, and I don't feel bad about it at all.
well,
But
and
but it is weird because like you think this is the age of information, and we can communicate in the blink of an eye all around the world, and you still see the same exact things happening today, right? Especially with the subject matter we're talking about when it comes to the unhoused or travelers. Like it's the big problem is the people at the bottom.
well, okay, so yeah, there are reflections of today. Like for example, there was a ton of fear mongering about immigrants, tons. Because when we talk about our migratory workforce, 60% of them, give or take, at one point in time or another, would be immigrants, from different countries. And what we know of as white was different than what they knew as white back then. You did not look at Italians or like as an example, or even the Irish as white at the time. You
Right.
didn't, and you didn't do that for a long time in American history. Um, but some of the things that they would say is like, all these immigrants, they're coming from prisons, they're coming from insane asylums, that kind of thing. You heard that all the time, that they're plotting to take over. And you heard this all the way up through like when Birth of a Nation came out, and the pointy hat people started becoming popular again, in like
What
the
is Birth of a Nation?
19s and 20s. That was the pointy hat people movie that was
Okay.
really popular, and yeah, like once that movie came out, and the second iteration of those assholes happened, that conspiracy theory happened. They took reins with that, and they used that as a reason to further continue to go after hobos and unions and IWW wobblies and so on and so forth. And that's the fear mongering about immigrants. Um, yeah, and a lot of I've heard a few, and y'all can argue with me later if you want, but I've heard a few thinkers they've thought like the idea because they kind of framed everybody as like a lot of the hobos and vagrants as people that were like literally hiding under bridges with things that go like they're going to like they were blaming the Chicago fire on them.
Right, right.
Like right. But they were pretend they were kind of like acting like these were a formal group that was like really sophisticated, like working networks of this or that, and not just the homeless traveling workforce that they were. You know what I mean? Which is that's all they were. um, but
So,
I've
so
heard
the
some
point of
thinkers
blaming
say,
and the point of like demonizing the travelers, the hobos, the IWW, the labor forces, is just to keep people separated and have someone to blame. Is that like the general
yeah,
idea there?
the more you keep people separate and pointing at each other, the less they're going to point at you. That was a lesson that bosses learned early on. Early on. And a lot of these conspiracy theories, there's just it was just like a ton of red scare, a ton of red scare. They're all anarchists, and then when the Bolshevik Revolution came around and World War I started nearing the corner, then you had, they're all Bolsheviks, they're all Reds, they're all, it just the Red Scare just kind of continued.
So what is the Red Scare? Is that the demonizing of the IWW?
Red Scare, the color red is generally been associated with the left in general worldwide. And it was first associated, I think, maybe it been about the time of like the Paris Commune when it was first associated with the left, even in America. But yeah, so like for example, in history, red was the color of the IWW. When we look at the mine wars, we talk about rednecks. They're all wearing the red bandanas. That's part of that same tradition. Red stood
Oh,
for
okay.
the color of the martyrs of the labor movement that came before them.
We have some new
Um,
people coming in. There's a little confusion in the chat right now. IWW stands for Industrial Workers of the World. It's one union for
right.
all unions, for all workers, for all workers.
Correct. That
But
is
there's a little
correct.
confusion in the chat. I want to clear up. All right, so we're getting into the late 1800s and the early 1900s at this point. People are just hopping trains to work, and they're working together to do so, and they start, um, unionizing and being part of the labor force in a radical way. Um, where does like all the old folk musicians come in? Were they there for the whole ride? Because I know what like Woody Guthrie, Pete Seeger, Leadbelly, Utah Phillips. These were all train riders, right?
Those guys came later. Those guys
Okay,
came
okay.
later.
I'm putting
This
those carriages in front of the
generation,
horse.
you're gonna have people like Harry McClintock with
Okay,
he's Big
Big
Rock
Rock
Candy.
Candy Mountain. Yeah.
Right. That's the era that you're gonna have here, and you're gonna have this guy Joe Hill.
What's the name
Um,
again?
this is Joe Hill.
Joe Hill. Okay.
I got some books here. Yeah, so like Joe Hill, and then you have something called the IWW Little Red Songbook that started coming out now. Um, if you listen to some of the really like the turn of the century, yeah, I thought I saw Joe Hill last night. I see that comment. That was written right after his death. But so a lot of wobbly songs, a lot of labor songs. There's some that were pulled into the Little Red Songbook from the Knights of Labor that came before them. But a lot of them were kind of birthed out of the free speech movement. And the free speech movement is when some of this hobo stuff gets really freaking fun. Like for real. Right, so there were dozens and dozens of these fights, and they spanned for like 20 years, right? And I when we're talking about free speech fights, so a real famous one would be the one in Spokane, and this is how one of these fights would go. And some of them are really, really violent. Some of them were really, really quick. Some of them drug out for a long time. Every one of them was very different. But this one in Spokane, Washington, how this went was you had a bunch of labor sharks. And labor sharking was when, like, hobos would come into town and they would want a job and they would go to this, labor shark is what they would call them. And they would buy a job, literally buy a job, right? And it was like it was a scam, because the factory owners or the mine owner or whoever they're working with would be would get a cut also, and then they would rapid fire folks, you know what I mean, and just get a turnover and just be ended up not paying people and get the next person in, or they would sell them fake jobs and send them so far out that they wouldn't want to come back and anger
Get
for their money.
retribution. Yeah.
Right, right. Or the police would be on the job shark's payroll, and if you complained, you're just going to get your ass whooped anyway.
Or worse, I'm
So,
sure.
right, so that was job sharking. That was job sharking, right? And the IWW was had a campaign against job sharking. It was one of their things that they wanted to stand up against because that's just so radical. Oh my gosh.
How dare they?
How,
How
how
dare they?
dare they? How dare they, those radicals? So, so they wanted to end job sharking. So they would come out and they set up, they were doing it specifically in Spokane. And they came out and they started setting up at IWW office and they started doing this thing called soapboxing, which is, when you put down a soapbox or some other platform to stand on. Sometimes they'd even wheel up like horse-drawn carts and you'd stand on the cart even, whatever platform to get you tall, and you would give a speech about whatever it is. And so they were trying to raise awareness about soapboxing and about other labor woes of the time, such as the 8-hour workday, and or ending child labor would be another one. And so they would stand up and for an IWW member, it would start with "my fellow workers" or something of the sort. And then, folks would gather around, and some street speakers or soapboxers were really famous, and folks would be really interested when they came to town. A real famous one was Elizabeth Gurley Flynn. Um, I have a visual. This is Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, and she's wonderful. Um, and she was present during this particular free speech fight. So what
This is in
happens is,
Spokane, Washington.
okay,
Okay.
right. So the job sharks go to the city council, and they're like, "Hey, we need you to outlaw the street speaking stuff." Because they're, people are getting,
They're
getting
getting
a little
educated.
agitated. They're
Yeah, you
getting
can't have that.
agitated out there. And so they go and they make a new ordinance and say that nobody can do any street speaking. And at first, the Wobblies follow suit. They're like, okay, well, if nobody can do it, then we won't do it. But then they gave the Salvation Army a pass for them to go out and sing their songs and do their preaching. And the Wobblies weren't having that. Why do they get to practice their free speech and we can't practice our free speech? Right? And so then you get all these songs that are written to the same tunes of the songs, the old gospel songs. That's why you hear that,
I
because
always
they're
wondered that.
literally
Okay.
standing next to the Salvation Army and singing over the top of them their songs. There'll be pie in the sky when you die. That's a lie.
Okay. I was wondering
Yeah.
that because I remember, when we met, you and Les were talking about that, how the gospel songs, kind of came into to pro union songs and pro worker songs and pro labor songs. So I did forget the connection there. So they're actually, exercising their free speech and giving a middle finger to the Salvation Army at the same time.
Yeah, they called them the Starvation Army. Yeah, well, of course, this made everybody mad, right? So the police started arresting the Wobblies. They leave the Starvation Army alone. They arrest the Wobblies. Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, who's in town, she's helping out with the local paper. She starts printing and sending out telegraphs telegrams of how she needs hobos or men to fill the jails in Spokane. And suddenly the rails are full of incoming wobbly hobos and on street boxes, one after another, to say, "My fellow workers," and get ripped down
That's a
to
beautiful
go to
train line, no
jail.
matter which way you're coming in, too, right? That's what's called the High Line. So I can only imagine being one of those hobos. Like you're riding this beautiful line through Montana or the Panhandle, Idaho, or through beautiful part of Washington State to go get your ass arrested. For a good cause. That's beautiful.
Man, it is so pretty. So, so nice out there.
I'm trying to get up there within the next couple of months, man. I got to check it out one more time at least.
Well, do you know what a mimeograph is, anybody? It's like a photocopier kind of thing, right?
Mimeograph?
Yeah, and the ink smells real funny. But they're like portable. You could have them in a suitcase, right? Well, that's an old school instrument. Back during those days, a lot of wobblies would have these mimeographs, and they would literally be in the back of box cars. Yeah, purple ink. Yeah, and they'd literally be back of box cars printing off flyers, so that they could pass them out in the hobo jungles and folks that's going on as they're going down the rails.
So as a
Um,
way of organizing.
yeah, it was a way of organizing. Yeah, so and the guy who invented it, his last name was Dick, and so they would literally call them the Dick Machine. Like, I have a Dick Machine.
So many jokes there. I'm gonna leave it alone. I'm gonna leave it alone and be a mature individual for the first time in my life. But that's hilarious.
Yeah, but so many hobos came flooding into Spokane that that they filled up the jails. I mean, people were crushed to death. People died. They filled up the jails. They started filling up schools. Eventually, it got so expensive to hold everybody that they had to eventually release everybody. And that particular free speech fight, the Wobblies did win. They did not win all the free speech fights. Some of them were extremely bloody. Like, I'm talking hundreds, hundreds unalived. Um, and there are common trends through them, though. Um, which, for example, the flood the jails thing was used multiple times. It worked several times. In some cases, it did not.
It's got a bunch
Um,
of people in jail, and that's it.
yeah, and that could be dangerous, during that time period because they would cram them in like people were crushed. They wouldn't feed people. It was bad. It was bad. And you were definitely treated differently depending on what race you were. 100%. You know.
But even
Um,
today, as a traveler, I always say like being a white guy gives me opens so many more doors for me, and I have to worry so much less about my safety and security as I travel. Compared, and
Absolutely.
that's today. You can only imagine, over 100 years ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we were talking about the Great Tramp Scare and about how freaked out people were. Some of the things that people some of the things that here's a good example of that about the discrepancies, like when it came to like hobo women or vagrant women, like the men, if they would arrest you, a lot of time you would end up on a rock crushing gang. You know what I mean? You'd be out, crushing rock or whatever manual labor they had for that area.
Right.
The women, though, let's say you're even with child. If you're white, you're most likely to be put in something called an industrial school, and that's where they're gonna try to reform you. And depending on what part of the eugenics craze you're in, they might even forcibly sterilize you.
Really.
Right. And that would also happen with the black women, except for while they would send a black pregnant woman to the rock pile. They didn't care about her being a woman with child because she was black.
Horrible. Right. Right.
Yeah, and that was just the way it was.
Right.
And it was that way for a long time. They didn't care, but a white woman, and especially depending on her age, would get handled with kid gloves and sent somewhere else. Sent to an unwed mother's home, sent to an industrial school, something like that. So that was a stark difference, especially like with women. Um, stark difference.
So okay, we're entering the early 1900s at this point, right? During the Spokane filling of the
Yeah.
jails and around the country.
Well, I know there's a couple other things that are happening at this time too, because the Wobblies are starting to get real popular. And they have a huge amount of folks who call themselves Wobblies. Not, you have a lot of folks who call themselves Wobblies and really were Wobblies at heart, but didn't really pay dues. You had a lot of that amongst the hobo population. But they played part and they played suit and they went to those places when asked to help out. You know what I mean? It was all part of um, you know being part of the big fight. Um,
So they're still part of the movement. They weren't paying dues paying members, but they weren't excluded because they weren't paying dues.
exactly. No, no. Everybody was always welcome. That was the whole point. The more the merrier was the whole point.
Well, I love
And,
the honor
and really
system, like
still
to
is.
pay your dues now in the IWW, where it's like a sliding scale. If you make
Right.
and it's
Exactly.
it's an honor system. You need to be honest when you sign up, But if you make this much, you pay $2. You make this much, you pay four, so on, so on.
Right. Exactly. Um,
For anyone coming in late, the Wobblies are part of the IWW, which is the Industrial Workers of the World. It's one union for all workers. So we're going through the history of train riders and hobos and the labor force that they were involved in up until the late 1800s, post Civil War. Now we're getting into the early 1900s.
right. Well, at the same time that we have the free speech fights going on, we have this guy. Who's James E. Tao. You
James E.
see,
Powell.
yeah, I don't know if you see it there. He's holding a copy of the Hobo News.
Okay, okay.
This guy's known as the Hobo Millionaire.
Oh, is that the one that started the hobo colleges and stuff, or am I misinformed there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he is the guy who started the Hobo colleges. He went to Harvard, he went to theological school, he went to medical school, he was well educated. He refused to spend any of his money on himself outside of his tuition. Like his family would send him money while he was school, and he would only spend it on the poor. He considered himself a Christian socialist. He eventually founded something called the IBWA, which is the International Brotherhood Welfare Association. And
IBWA.
yeah, IBWA. And with that, he put together, he funded the Hobo News, which was the first newspaper of its kind, but it was a hobo newspaper. So it talked about like what was going on in the workforce, who was hiring, who wasn't. If anybody is interested in knowing more about the Hobo News, um, they have a huge amount of them digitized at the St. Louis Public Library website. So you can go there and read them yourself.
I definitely want to
Most
check
of
that
them.
out.
Yeah,
The
it's
St.
all,
Louis Public Library website has the old copies of the hobo newspapers.
yes,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, and they're fun to go through. Jack London's printed in there. I mean, there's a lot of famous authors. Harry Kemp. I don't know if anybody knows who Harry Kemp is. But a lot of famous writers wrote for the Hobo News. Um, And so the modern iteration of the papers like that we have today would be some of the papers you see in cities that are for, the unhoused, where they're selling them. They get a bunch from, I don't know what you call those now. The one in Nashville is called the Contributor. They're like papers that the unhoused can sell on the
Right,
street.
the one in Boston is called Vagrant News, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
pay
That,
50 cents or
that's
whatever to
that's
donate
the
for it.
iterations of that model that we have today, right? That's the first version of that in America,
So,
specifically
was it
Georgia.
intended to be read by hobos and travelers, or was it intended to be read by
Hobos and
folks?
travelers,
Okay, okay.
hobos and travelers specifically, and they took it everywhere, and would print their own copies to sell, sometimes even. Um, So yeah, they were very industrious. But he also founded something called the Hobo College, and the first one in Chicago, the biggest one, in Chicago, is ran by this guy. This is Ben Rittman.
Ben Whitman.
He's also known as the Hobo Doctor. Some folks also called him the Clap Doctor. But there's a really great book on him. I've got it here. Hold on, I'm pulling it. I have a pile of books next to me. But I wanted to give this as a book recommendation. It is called The Blondest Radical, and this is a book on Ben Whitman, the life and world of Ben Whitman, Chicago's celebrated social reformer, hobo king, and whorehouse physician. But he ran the Hobo College for a while, and he was on and off arrested for um, mailing birth control information and things like that. That was illegal at the time. You weren't allowed to even mail pamphlets talking about birth control.
Really?
Yeah, you would get arrested.
Kind of makes you think, like, when was this country actually free?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and some of the things he's said in the past are kind of problematic. I have to admit, but he did contribute a decent amount, including I don't know if you. I have a copy of it too here. Here it is. He wrote a book that's real famous called Boxcar Bertha.
Okay.
This was written by Ben Rittman. And it eventually got turned into a really hard to watch movie in the 70s. But this book is amazing. And the book is nothing like the movie. Nothing, absolutely. But this book is amazing, and he wrote it from a female's perspective, and he did a great job. He did an amazing job.
So
Um,
it's Ben Whitman, the hobo doctor, aka the
right.
clap doctor, a bit problematic, and he wrote Boxcar Bertha. That's the name of that book.
Yes.
Okay. So read the book to get actual, like, to know what it's about, but the movie's terrible, from what
The
I'm
movie
gathering.
is terrible. But this book is amazing. If you're wanting to learn about that era, this is a great one. It kind of glances on the politics at the time and things like that. It's a great read if you kind of want to really understand a really solid first-hand account. Now, the hobo colleges, you would go there, you would learn all sorts of interesting things. They would teach you about labor rights, of course. They would teach you, like, they would talk about philosophy, political awareness, teach folks about job sharking and how to get around that, who was bad, who was good. You would trade information about what it was like working in what areas,
Wait,
who
so
was
I
unemployed.
definitely had a misconception here. So hobo colleges, explained to me initially, was a way for hobos to get off the road, but it seems like it's
Oh,
more like
absolutely it
to
was.
go
Yep,
and learn more about travel and how to avoid.
absolutely it was. In the same way, they were they worked in the same way as shelter did. That's why you would have a huge influx of travelers and hobos staying there in the winter time, versus the summertime. There's less work in the winter time. And then in the summertime, folks would go and pick crops and stuff like that. So yeah, you would have, and then all winter time, especially at the school in Chicago, you'd have all sorts of really famous speakers come and talk, and they would trade speakers with another place that was up the street a ways called the Dill Pickle Club, which was also founded and ran by an IWW member. Um,
Awesome name, by the way, Dill Pickle Club.
the
I don't
Dill
even know what
Pickle
it's
Club.
about. I'm about
Right,
it.
right, and it was kind of an interesting space. They both would talk about everything from like women's issues, like birth control we were just talking about. In fact, they actually debated the Hobo College debated several times the University of Chicago, like their debate team, and won. Like they had a debate team for the Hobo College.
Really?
Yeah, they won, made headlines. You can find those old articles. They're fun.
I'm looking at the
But
comment
they
section here.
debated birth control.
There's a lot of people asking where they can find a list of these books you're talking about. Like if you have a list somewhere online, or if you have,
I will make a list.
I can throw over my Discord.
I'll figure it out. Yeah, we'll figure it out. We will get a list. We will get a list. Yeah, but James Eads Howe, he funded all of this through cash that was brought down through his family. His family built the Eads Bridge, which is the bridge that goes over the Mississippi into St. Louis. So we had that money, and his family also worked with the Wabash Railroad. So he inherited a decent amount of money.
So this guy
Um,
gets rich and he's like, I'm gonna go be a hobo and help all the other hobos while doing it.
yes.
Solid vibe. Awesome
Now,
vibe check.
now, disclaimer, sad ending. Um, he gave away so much of his money and refused so much to spend any money on himself that eventually he literally died of starvation.
I'm sorry, one more time.
He literally died of starvation.
Really?
He was down to only eating a bowl of pea soup a day, to the point where his body was so emaciated that he got sick really fast. You know, so there's that. And it's a very sad ending. But his life is amazing, and the things that he contributed are amazing.
And this is
Um,
Van Wit and
no, I'm talking about James Eads Howe, the guy who
James E.
funded
Chow.
it
Okay.
all.
Right, the hobo millionaire, not the hobo doctor. Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, and James Eads Howe had an arch nemesis. Who's this guy? This is Jeff Davis, the Hobo King, in his jalopy.
The fairy tales I hear about that man from other people with no basis in reality is alarming. Alarming. Just will be going around the chat.
Okay, this is where we go into when we say that hobos have never been a political monolith. Um, and a disclaimer. There are a lot of really great folks at the Hobo Convention. Um, a lot of real genuine folks that I care about, and I'm just going to say that before I even go down this road.
We could not go down this road. We can just shuck and jive this one, but it's up to you. It's
Well,
up to
no,
you.
I can be dainty with it.
Okay, okay.
I can be dainty with it, because I like those guys. We've emailed back and forth, and I want to be able to have them on to talk about some of this stuff too, but it is what it is, and but yeah. So back in the day, when we're talking about turn of the century, this guy started showing up, and he started showing up as Jeff Davis, quote unquote, in the teens or so. Um, he started calling himself the Hobo King. He's self-appointed, by the way. Awfully
I'm
early
the
on.
hobo emperor as of right now. I'm just throwing that out
Well, I refer to him as the Hobo Dictator.
there.
Well, and a lot of other hobos referred to him as the Hobo Dictator too. Um, But yeah, he did not like IWW hobos. He was more the pro America, in which IWW hobos were pro America too, but more in the nationalist fashion, kind of pro America, um, patriotic, pro war, pro USA. Um, he wasn't religious, very moralistic, kinda, very white minded.
A good way of saying that.
Um, yeah. So yeah. Like for example, he put on a big. This is an example of white-minded. He put on a big campaign where he wanted to fight the pointy hat people, and his entire campaign was about not about the violence that they were doing, not about the terrible things that they were doing, but that he didn't like their admissions and the way that they handled admissions, and that he thought that they should also invite Jewish people to join.
That was the big problem he had.
He actually said that.
Look, we can't let words and beliefs, dictate what we think about people, Abby. Come on now.
Oh my God, even for that time period. And you can, okay, so like, and you can find these articles back in newspaper archives, Um, so, and a lot of there, and this is highly covered, highly covered. I mean, this guy was a media whore. He was. Um, but you could tell by the tone of the journalists covering these events of like that they noticed the things that he did not mention. You could tell by the way that the journalists are writing. You know what I mean? And it's humorous, like the unsaid thing. Um, yeah, because other people noticed that he wasn't saying certain things, I guess. That he wasn't disliking the Klan for the right reasons. Oh, sorry I said that word. Are you frozen? Disliking the Klan for the right reasons. Oh, sorry I said that word. Are you frozen?
Right now, Abby's frozen. Oh, I got you back.
Oh, we're back to you. You were frozen for me for a sec, too.
All right, I think TikTok was just acting foolish. I think we're back.
Yeah, so, yeah, he was something else, but he started a group of folks called Hobos of America, right? And Hobos of America, God, he was a pathological liar. It would take me forever. It would take me whole hours to go through the long list of tall tales that he told and ways that I disproved them. I'm gonna have to do a deep dive in that, like on a separate thing at one point. But yeah, he was very um, he was for putting together farms and forcibly arresting other hobos. He was the anti-hobo. He was the anti-hobo. He got, but by the time World War II came around, he was so into the idea of having hobos of America cards so that just his hobos wouldn't be the ones who got arrested, so that he could work with the police departments and be like, well, if they have this card, they're good. You can arrest the rest. That kind of thing. Like,
One
like
of us.
he was bad news. He was the anti-hobo, right?
So
And
Hotel de Jink, that was him, right?
he took credit for other people's success, is what he did. He
Okay,
took
okay.
credit. I think the only one that he actually opened himself and was any part of the opening of might have been the one in New York. He absolutely did not open the one in Seattle. No way.
So
Absolutely.
Hotel de Jink was a slew of hotels aimed at travelers for travelers to stay at, hobos and train riders.
Right, right. It was a bunch of hotel and it dip mo hostels. And it depended where you're at, the way that they're run, because they are run by different people and different groups of people. Certain ones were a little bit more open to other races or were segregated, while some of them only allowed white men. And any one of them that was directly associated with Hobos of America, if you were on the left side of the spectrum, a wobbly, you weren't allowed in if you were found out to have a wobbly card. Um, he was very anti-radical, very anti-radical. He read scared a lot in the papers. So
So complete polar opposite to what was just kind of going on before.
yes, he was complete polar opposite. And he advocated for some really terrible stuff, real terrible stuff. Um, yeah, and we could talk about him forever, but God, he was awful. But by the time that he got to, he did not found, any like the hobo convention in Brent. He got involved and started showing up over at that convention like in the 40s, and he started to try to kind of like push this idea of like he kind of wanted to change the public image of what the female hobo was like, and so there's a slew of hobo queens that were not hobos. They looked pretty. That he kind of influenced to be queen, starting a little bit after the 40s, like through the 50s.
So never hop the train, but look good on camera, put them on stage, kind of thing.
Right. And some of them would be like the niece of the mayor of the town in Britt, or a relative of another freight hopper. Um, and they for a while, and you'd find articles going up through the 80s, they would disallow you to be part of the hobo king queen thing if you were found to be on the left side of the spectrum or a hippie. As you went further on in time, if you were a hippie, you weren't allowed to be in there. Definitely the other side of the spectrum. And
Okay,
now
okay.
it seems more balanced. Where you go to the Brit gathering, it's still not. Um, it's still kind of like it's still corporatized. It is what it
Okay.
is. Hobo conventions used to pop up a little bit like rainbow gatherings did. You'd see them pop up in New Orleans, St. Louis, over here in Utah. They would just kind of pop up.
So instead of being
Uh,
a celebration of hobos, it was more of a gathering of hobos.
it was, yeah, you were trading information, you were trading tracks, you were trading songs, you were talking about, politics, a lot of political uprisings and what was going on here and there and how things worked out and what was true and what wasn't. Were you really there? That kind of stuff.
It seems like there's a little
Yeah.
confusion in the chat. How long did you hop trains for, Abby? Would you say?
Oh, about a decade or so, maybe more.
Okay, so 10 years or over. Someone was asking if you ever hop trains yourself.
Yeah, yeah. For a while. You know,
Abby walked so people like me could run, hands down.
I mean, there's a lot of old timers who still, have been on the road for like 40 years and stuff. You know what I mean? And some of them old timers will go to that gathering, the Brit gathering. There's some real genuine folks that do go. Um, so that being said, you know, I do like those guys. I do wish that they would phrase some of the stuff that they have in our Hobo archive differently, and I feel like there's some that you need to be wary of some of the essays.
Well, there's
Um,
one of
so,
those cats reached out to me, not a major player, but they did a whole interview with me, and then I went back and read the interview. We spoke for the interview over the phone, and then they wrote down everything I said wrong. Like
yeah, yeah,
you
I
can go
mean,
check the
yeah,
interview. It's just type in my name or anywhere man. interview, it'll come up. It's like the Iowa University or something like that. I'm like, I didn't say half of this. You
Yeah,
know?
so yeah, I mentioned that to them. I've spoken with them. And I asked, like, you have these interviews in here because he's got several interviews that are all put together that way. And I was like, where's the actual interview? Because this isn't how you're supposed to take an oral history. Like, where's the interview? I don't want to hear your narration of an interview.
The
I want,
transcript. Yeah, yeah.
give me the interview, you know? So yeah, be wary of interviews and oral histories that are framed as a narrative instead of an actual interview. I'm just putting that out there in general, like
Like,
no
no matter
matter
how journalistic it looks, if it's not
yeah,
an
no
actual
matter where
transcript,
you're looking or studying what you're studying, be wary of that stuff. Um, yeah, and a lot of, you can go back. There's a lot of, you can get a newspapers.com account. It's not that expensive. A lot of people can't afford that. There's Chronicling America. That's a great place to look up old newspapers if folks are wanting to just kind of poke around. When you're looking
chronicling,
through
what is
old
it? Chronicling
newspapers,
America?
yeah. When you're looking through old newspapers, though, remember, just like today, those are biased sources. So just because you're reading a paper that says that the WWII are going to take over Oklahoma doesn't mean that that ever was an actual plot. But it does give you an idea about what people were thinking and what their opinions were. So take into account who's writing those articles and what space they're coming from as you're doing that, and use those resources to further your research elsewhere. Like if you see a meeting listing, now can you find those meeting minutes? If you see, birth certificate, death certificate, can you find the actual certificate? Can you find the actual jail roster? Use the newspaper to find those notices, that kind of research, but don't expect to use it for firsthand. You know what I mean? It's good to
Without
find
source
patterns.
documents, you can't prove it.
Yeah, you get what I'm saying, but it still is what it is, just like newspapers today. That'd be like saying, "Oh, New York Post said this; it must be true." Like, come on, give me a break.
I don't trust anything that has advertisements attached to it, to be honest with you, because they're trying to sell you something.
I believe it if
It's
the
their
onion
job to get
says
more
it.
eyes on what they're doing.
I totally believe it if the onion says it.
Um, to kind of just take a step out from the timeline, the chronological timeline we're doing. How do you? And honestly, if you feel a certain way, no problem at all. Um, Social media train riders. There's more and more of them, for sure. Me being one of them. I don't even play an instrument while I travel anymore. I just film, I just live stream, and I hop a train on occasion. What's your take on social media meeting train riding? I know it's always kind of been documented, and it's always, been in newspapers and news stories, even going all the way into the '90s and early 2000s. There's documentaries about train hoppers like Long Gone and Hobo. But what's your personal take on? Is it good for the community? Is it good for train riders to kind of get it out there, or do you think it's harmful? And again, no hard feelings either way. I'm genuinely curious.
Um, I'm fairly neutral on the subject, actually. You know, I said this before. Historically, it was never in the shadows. That didn't really
Right.
happen until like, more like privacy culture, kind of like '80s kind of privacy culture stuff, kind of came around. Um, that's when it kind of started to become kind of hush hush and quiet more, and a lot of that has to do with like stuff coming out of like that whole CONTELPRO stuff and so like like we were saying back in the day, you had Hobo News. It was very obvious, people knew who was doing what and who was writing what. People knew that people were coming in and out on the rails and so on and so forth. And today it's the same. Those guys know. They know.
Wait, know what?
They know we're here.
Oh yeah, true.
They
Every
know.
bull, every train worker has a story about bumping into a rider. You know,
They ain't stupid. All those workers know. All those conductors know. They are all looking for us. I know.
it is always nice when you bump into an engineer, conductor, they spot you, and you're like, "Oh shit, I'm caught." And they throw a case of water out the window, and then just give you a wave and a
Yeah.
smile.
Hey, thanks everybody.
Yeah, if you guys like the live and you want Abby to do more stuff like this, you guys are engaged in the comment section. I see the taps through the roof, but Abby does social media for a living. So if anyone wanted a gift, now's the fucking time. So
That's
we can
true.
incentivize Abby to keep on coming back and doing this stuff. You know what I mean? But I derailed the conversation for a moment. So now we're going into like the like 30s and 40s. With Jim Davis, that's what he changed his name to from Jeff Davis, if I got that correctly.
His name was Jeff Davis. His actual name was Clarence Jefferson Davis.
I would get rid of the
Yeah,
Clarence too. I can't blame him there.
yeah, that was his given name. Um,
So after that, personally, like I haven't seen anything like 40s and well 50s. I kind of didn't find a lot for like train riding and stuff like that. I'm sure I just didn't know where to look. But
all right. Well, this is when Red Scare really kicks in America. Because you have the whole IWW era happening. And this is happening like up until up until like 1920 or so, right? And then we start having the Red Scare. We have World War I and the first Red Scare. When we're talking about the first Red Scare, we did have a series of I don't know what I'm allowed to say on this app of you know things go boom stuff.
I don't know what to
Um,
say either.
like,
A
yeah,
heavy impact
so
of air being moved at a violent force.
right. We had some of those things happening. In different times. During a few years. Um, and other kind of issues or whatnot. Dynamite was a popular tool for a moment of some anarchist groups. Um, but this stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. You had a literal government taking machine boom pew pews and to miners and
You gotta
whatnot.
talk like we're in
So
fucking kindergarten.
you get what I'm saying? I mean, there was literal
Right.
guerrilla warfare going on for a lot of these skirmishes. I mean, look at Blair Mountain.
Well, what
So
happened at Blair Mountain?
that's we're talking about mine wars. You know what I mean? Like whole coal towns. That's when we start getting into things like Big Bill Haywood and stuff like that. Which
This is
that's
when
a
company towns
huge
were super prevalent, right? Like you worked
yes.
there, you lived there. If you did anything
Yes, they
against
pay
the
you in
company, you and your
script. You
family are
buy from
gone.
the they pay you in script. You buy from the company store. Right, right. So I mean, these things aren't happening in a vacuum. You there's lots of blood being shed. So the Palmer raids happened. There's a bunch of Red Scare. People are posting all over the place that these anarchists, these socialists, these Bolsheviks, they're planning to take over the U.S. government like they did in Russia. Look at what they did in Russia. These Bolsheviks, they're gonna start a Soviet States of America here. That's what they're gonna do to us. So they start fear mongering about World War I, and what was happening with the Bolshevik Revolution. You had a lot of the left side of the aisle. was extremely against World War One. They would have do soapbox speeches against World War One. Eugene Debs, who was one of the founders of the IWW, and he was the last person in the United States to run for president on a socialist ticket. He ran from prison because he was in prison for giving a speech against World War One.
Hmm.
Free speech be damned.
It's
Eventually,
a
of
free
course,
country.
yeah, eventually he was released. He did make a wave. Had he been free, he probably would have made a pretty big wave. Um, but yeah, Eugene Debs is an interesting character. You can find copies of this speech that got him put in jail, and you can read it for yourself until and ask yourself, is this something that somebody should be in prison for? Ask yourself that question, read it for yourself.
Okay, okay.
Um,
And where can I find that again?
it's
Where the
you
chat
do a
find it?
Google search, it'll be easy to find. Eugene Debs prison speech. It'll probably show up.
Eugene Debs prison speech.
We'll put together a list of resources for folks. I'll start working on that tomorrow in the morning.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I got to start reading up on this stuff myself.
Yeah, yeah. We'll get a list of resources going on. But yeah, Eugene Debs ran from prison. They started arresting, full on arresting and raiding IWW headquarters, the headquarters of any union offices. They were destroying books. Pretty much they just outlawed the IWW altogether. If you were a radical, you were going to be arrested. If you were an immigrant, they were deporting you. The pointy hat people loved this because they were arch nemesis of the IWW. IWW fought them tooth and nail. They did terrible things to the IWW. Maybe some of those things we can maybe bring up on the red play button
So proud of
sometime.
you.
I'm working on it.
It will
Yeah,
be nice to
because
be over there so
there
we
we
can
can
speak
say
like
some of the
adults.
gory details, but yeah, so there's a couple of those fights that were pretty bloody that might be interesting to talk about that we can't maybe necessarily talk here.
Right, right.
So, yeah, but yeah, so that crushed the wobbly movement as we knew it. They feared mongered, and maybe they were right to a point. That there could be a strike in a war industry like steel, for example, during war that could cripple the war effort. And thus they were just really hammering the idea that these people were all un-American, when the truth was is that they didn't want their American brothers and sisters to go be dying in a war that they thought was pointless. Now, speaking of that, a lot of historians now agree with the American left at the time. um, which
In
takes,
retrospect and hindsight.
yeah, yeah, in retrospect and hindsight. So it is what it is. But as you go into the Great Depression, when we're talking about the progressive era, there's been so much labor unrest that all the parties running were kind of pushing progressive values, or you know what I mean, or as far as labor stuff goes, because that tends to be what happens. You get a group of folks who are yelling and screaming about stuff, and eventually the folks who can actually pass laws take notice of what the people are screaming about, and eventually it happens. And then they take all the credit, and the people who are screaming about it get told that they're an American. And everybody goes on celebrating the things that they fought for and giving them the finger.
So it's a thankless job to say the least.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, just look at child labor is a good example of that. Wobblies and whatnot really fought to end child labor. And even just for labor standards, like for example, they didn't want you to blow dynamite in a mine while there were children in it. How radical is that? I mean, how dare they ask for such a thing?
Right? You know,
You
like
know, and so and
look
when
at
you talk,
Minecraft. Look at Minecraft nowadays. The kids yearn for the mines. Sorry, bad joke.
When we talk about radical, though, that phrase seems so scary to people, but these are the things that they were pushing for. Yes, you had folks who wanted to overturn the capitalist system, but for the most part, they just didn't want to be unalived. They wanted to be able to pay rent somewhere. They wanted to
Right.
be able to,
And be able to go home at the end of the
afford
day
a
safely.
life, eat every night, take a vacation,
So
just
enjoy
like
life while
everybody
working.
else. Feed their kids. How dare they? Yeah, I mean, eventually, when we get closer to the Great Depression, when the Great Depression started kicking in, that's when you started getting whole families coming in and being on the street, because so many people started becoming unemployed, and then you ended up with Hoovervilles popping up, which kind of changed the landscape quite a bit. And that's when,
Hooverville?
yeah, that's when Woody Guthrie starts showing up.
Okay. So what time frame are we in now? Going into the Great Depression, like 30s and
Yeah, 30s going in 30s, and we're talking about like before the New Deal. Um, so how many Hoovervilles were? I'm going to look at how many Hoovervilles there were. How many Hoovervilles? I bet there's a bunch that weren't documented. No definitive count, right? Yeah, but the first Hoovervilles started showing up about 1930 or so. And they were pretty. So Hoover was president at the time, hence the name Hooverville. And so these were pretty much hobo camps or whatnot that were more permanent, and that the government was setting up in places. So they're giant camps for the unhoused, because there were so many people out on the road and that were on the street. So many people have lost a lot. Especially Dust Bowl era, we had a lot of regional migrants moving from the plains into California, as an example.
right. You got a
Um,
whole state like Oklahoma or a good chunk of Oklahoma, that whole area that does
right.
agriculture, and all of a sudden nothing. They're stuck in that drought. Honestly, some of those small cities out there, that's still the most important thing that happened in that city. Like they still like the kids, they will talk about the Dust Bowl.
Hoover was terrible too. He was terrible president. He really was, and he was completely clueless. Right. So there are a lot of different hustles that unhoused would use throughout, different ones, different generations. But during that time, one of the popular hustles was to sell apples on street corners. And that was one of the hustles. You needed a cart or a barrel or, whatever you're working out of, but to sell apples. And Hoover went off and said something so ignorant as, I think the economy's doing great. People are leaving their jobs to go for the lucrative job of selling apples or something like that. And yeah, and people would not let him live that quote down.
So
They
he's
were
just
like
out of touch with the people at that point.
completely out of
Yeah,
touch with
showing it.
actual reality. Completely out of touch, right? And when the New Deal came around, you know, you ended up with a good amount of labor reforms finally starting to happen. And that's when we get things like overtime.
Oh, okay, like overtime pay comes. So what's New Deal? What is that?
New Deal laws are a bunch of laws that were meant to get us back on track. Um, so when we're talking about conservation programs to put unemployed people back to work. So relief, recovery, reform is pretty much what it was. Um, and Roosevelt kind of put forth a bunch of these programs, and we ended up with a lot of different. I'm looking up here, the whole huge. Our government grew immensely at this point. So we had the Civilian Conservation Corps, the Works Progress Administration, the Tennessee Valley Authority, the Social Security Act went through, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which was, and also which insured bank deposits, Securities Exchange Commission to regulate the stock market, all that coming out of the crash. The National Recovery Administration to try to set down some industrial codes for folks, Agricultural Adjustment Act, and when it came to child labor laws, this also changed stuff. So once you outlawed child labor, at least started to put some of those laws more in place, they had to hire more adult men, and thus the amount of unemployed dropped dramatically because now they actually had to pay men. Because before it was, why hire an adult for 20 cents when I can hire a child for 5? That
So the
was,
child
and
labor
that's
laws only
still
went
the
into like,
thinking today. That is
yeah,
still the
true.
thinking today.
But the idea of the child labor laws are like just under 100 years old in this country. It seems like it was so much further away than that, but it's something that
No, it
happened
was
back
the
in the 1930s.
30s. Yeah, it
Really?
was in the 30s, right? Mother Jones had passed, and she was the biggest labor crusader. She had passed before she ever saw her real work come to fruition.
That's
Um,
unfortunate.
it was very sad. But yeah, and overtime was something that was put into place to, not only to, help out workers, with the time and a half, but it was to de-incentivize, um, the bosses from keeping men over the 8 hours so that they would hire more men, thus, getting more people on the workforce. It was to try to, get more employed people. That was the reason for overtime.
Uh,
It was to punish the boss for wanting to work over the 8 hours.
Makes sense. So the 8-hour work week that was pushed mainly by the IWW and the labor force
Yeah,
back
that
in the
was
day.
mainly pushed by the IWW. Eventually, it caught on. Henry Ford was one of the first to really catch on. He was not great. But that being said, he did have some very progressive ideas when it came to labor, that being one of them. Um, a lot of people enjoyed working for him because of some of his work. Yeah, it's like the 8-hour school day. The push to have like public education was also something that folks, um, on the left side of the aisle kind of pushed pretty hard for. And there were a lot of conspiracy theories about ending child labor, and there are a lot of conspiracy theories about putting children in public schools. A lot of them having to do with Red Scare. They like, oh, they want to, like, for example, one of them was that um, the Bolsheviks want to put all of our children out of our hands and into school so that they could turn them into child soldiers. That was one of the conspiracy theories.
So they
As
were
it,
scaring people out of putting their kids in school.
yeah, they were, yeah, and also the pointy hat people kind of took onto this too as one of the reasons that they got extremely involved in schools. They wanted to, push the books they wanted to push and take out the books they wanted to take out and kind of do that kind of thing. They did that right away.
The Bolshevik, I have no familiarity with that whatsoever.
That phrase is referring to the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. So Russia had gone through this socialist communist revolution, and so Americans would always be pointing at the left side of the aisle in America and calling them Bolshevik.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So it became
Yes.
almost a derogatory term after a while.
Yeah, they just used it as a derogatory term. Now, not that being put said, there was a lot of folks at the time of the Bolshevik Revolution that were really excited about the revolution. You can't lie about that. But people were real excited about it. There's a movie, and it is a Hollywood movie, called Reds, and I warn you, it's a really long movie. But I feel like they did do a good job on it. There's a little bit of red scare, but not very much. They did a good job overall. But it's about the life of Jack Reed. Jack Reed was one of the only American. I think he was the only American that witnessed the Russian Revolution from inside of Russia, and he wrote a book about it before he died called 10 Days That Shook the World. So if you're interested in learning about that, his book is great. And that
Jack Reed.
movie Reds is about him, Jack Reed, and his life. Jack Nicholson is in it.
Oh, nice.
Beatty's in it. There's a lot of real famous actors in it. It's a Hollywood film. But it's called Reds, and I think they did a good job overall. Yeah, 10 Days That Shook the World, that's correct.
So the movie's
Um,
called Reds. The book's called 10 Days to Shook the World, and that's by Jack Reed.
Jack Reed, right. And his life is interesting. They did a good job on the movie. You could see them talking about things like the IWW, Emma Goldman, in the movie, other famous folks. So, yeah, that's a cool thing to kind of read up on if you're interested in that part of history. But yeah, a lot of people did fearmonger about it. But the truth is that these workers, they just wanted to be safe. That's what they wanted. They wanted their children to be safe. They wanted higher wages. They wanted to not be locked into their workplace when fires could be going off. They wanted
Right.
they wanted to not be taken advantage of.
It is weird to me. Like I was, in the Iowa Workers Union in Boston for years, and um, I got quite a few slice marks to prove it. But the see people that were so against unionization, knowing what, like, because if the alternative is no unionization, right? Like the workers don't work together at all, and we go back to a 12-hour work week. We only get paid for 8. Go back to having no break. Get back to working until your body's just broken and there's nothing for you at the end. You just go to the streets. Knowing how all that happened before and how unions have actually brought wages up for trades and stuff like that, which is what I'm most familiar with, and to see people be against that in 2025 or even 2000 to now is so weird to me, so bizarre to me. But again, you have one person saying, "Nope, that's not it. Unions are the problem," and when people that aren't educated or don't know any better go, "Okay, yeah, that sounds about right."
Um, yeah, we don't teach labor history in school at
No,
all.
no,
And in both political parties, have done all they can to kind of keep labor history out of schools. That's not specific to one or other party. Um, I and there's a lot of history revisionism. A good example would be like when we talk about the pointy hat people. Um, both conservatives and liberals joined. Both of them did. They both did. It was extremely popular. You know,
really.
it was extremely popular. Yeah, and more liberals, I guess, started pushing back earlier than more conservative side of the aisle, more the religious side of the aisle, really. I wouldn't even I don't like to call the Klan, the pointing hat people, conservative either, because I feel like that doesn't describe them. They're more like far into a different area. But the liberal side of the aisle really didn't start pushing back against it until the pointy hat people started putting forth more and more conservative leaning politicians. And then they were like, oh, well, we can't have this, and started pushing back then.
Because I
But
remember
a
in
lot
the
of the
80s, there was that
papers,
incredible speaker for the pointy hat people. I hate that we talk like this. But in the 80s, you had that, like, it was kind of a resurgence in that whole group just because some guy could talk really well. He was really eloquent and really smart. And you saw a whole revitalization. And, like, that's all it takes to get a hate group that was kind of falling apart and not really too prevalent to coming right back, no problem. One person with a mouth that can speak.
yeah,
It's alarming in a way.
yeah. It doesn't. It's people will jump on to some hateful stuff pretty quick, and a lot of it has to do with what they feel is self-preservation. You know,
True.
because a lot of this stuff is fueled by a lot of these conspiracy theories. So, as an example, you had a huge amount of pushback from labor rights papers, the IWW, other kind of unions like that, against the pointy hat people. And then the pointy hat people would publish in newspapers and stuff, that if you were anti them, that meant that you were pro Soviet, pro Bolshevik, pro anarchist, you were a commie, you were a red. And they would talk about how like whole groups of these wobblies were going to take over and create like Soviet states. They're going to take over whole states and stuff like that. Like
They create an imaginary problem to scare people into going on their
to
side, kind
scare
of thing.
people in line. Yeah, there was a lot of fear mongering. In the 20s. One of their primary platform was that they wanted to deport all the immigrants, and they used unions as an example of look at all these rebel rousers. These people are foreign agitators and just creating problems. We need to deport all these people.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, there was a big push for that. And if you're wanting to find some of the, again, you could find, and you can go and look up old papers from those and literally read what they thought about the IWW or socialism or communism. You could read that yourself. Those sources are easy to find about what people thought of themselves, whether or not they considered themselves whatever political ideology. That stuff's not hidden. You can read it from the horse's mouth. And so it's what it is.
It's not top secret.
It's
So
not
we're
top
go
secret. No.
chronologically. We're going just about to go into the Great Depression, right? Dust Bowl hits. The Great Depression's here, and that causes a giant resurgence in hobo culture and people hopping and trying to find work. I'm assuming.
Yes, yes. It does create another kind of resurgence. It kind of takes on a different, slightly less radical face, though, at this time. Um, and old Jeff Davis, the hobo dictator, was still on the prowl also. And he was pushing a lot of stuff that was, by the time World War II hit, he had gone full, like, do you know what the, like, fifth column is? It's another conspiracy theory.
No,
So during World War II, there was this idea that Japanese and Germans were going to come in and they were creating this like fifth column group or whatever. And they were going to take over. There were a bunch of spies and all this stuff. And so Jeff Davis, the hobo dictator, put together this group of guys called the Jungle Bulls, right? And he had had loose groups of these guys before in the Hotel de Gates earlier in his life. But these Jungle Bulls would they would run left-leaning people off the rails. They were calling them un-American. They would run Japanese folks off the rails. If you looked German or had a German accent, they'd hurt you. Um,
sounds about right.
yeah. So they kind of ran a group called the Jungle Bulls and did that for a while, which was not cool of him. And that he was helped out by this guy named One Eye Conley, and he was known as the famous gate crasher. And he was known to just show up at like real big events, and people would like chum him in and stuff. And he's actually pretty interesting to look up in the newspaper archive stuff about him. Some of that stuff's real hilarious.
Was it one-eyed Charlie? What was it?
One-eyed Conley.
One-eyed Connolly. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so there was that going on. But a lot of hobo labor work at that point had started to be suppressed. We're starting to go into the McCarthy era, and then the suppression just happens more as we go into the McCarthy era. We were talking about Pete Seeger. Pete Seeger ended up getting in front of the House Un-American Committee. And so the McCarthy era was the second Red Scare in which they started going through and picking up left-leaning folks and accusing them of, being un-American, wanting to, being part of secret groups to be against the government and whatnot.
Yeah, you're
And
doing
so,
all these things we don't have proof of, but we know you're doing it, kind of shit.
yeah, they had people turning on each other and whatnot. And, and to make this clear, it was both liberals and conservatives that went after folks. That wasn't just one or the other side of the aisle. Um, yeah, and they brought up anybody who's doing anything left leaning in Hollywood got pulled up. Um, if they
Was that
were
like the
groups
blacklisted
attached
kind
to
of
groups,
like blacklisted for being communist and all that there in
you
Hollywood?
got blacklisted, you couldn't get a job. And we're not just talking about, we focus a lot on the celebrities, but, this really affected people like teachers, especially. I mean, it didn't matter what industry you were in. If you were suspected to be sympathetic to anything left leaning, you could lose your career. It didn't
So
matter the
it
industry.
was like the Salem witch hunts all over again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, we look at Pete Seeger, he's Uncle Pete. You know, these
Wait,
folks,
is that what they call UP Uncle Pete?
I mean, these folks weren't doing anything nefarious. They never actually found any serious like network of people wanting to bring down America. We're talking about people who wanted more progressive things. Just like the radicals of before. So, um,
Hmm. No, but so Union Pacific they call Uncle Pete. Is that why? Because of Pete Seeger? Or is it unrelated?
no, no, I
Okay,
don't
okay.
think so. But Pete Seeger. Yeah, Pete Seeger was one of the ones who got drug in front of the House Un-American Committee. And then you had other people that were affected, like famous folks like Charlie Chaplin. Um, he spoke out against the McCarthy era and the witch hunts that were going on. He was an immigrant, and he went back to the UK for a while, and then they just wouldn't let him in back into the States. They just wouldn't let him in.
A problem solved on their end. Shit.
Eventually, they allowed him back and issued him the states did, and or issued him a formal apology. But if you go back and you look at Charlie Chaplin's work, he did a lot of very obvious works that were against those kind of thoughts, those kind of Red Scare ideas.
Yeah, like
He
the
thought
Great
everybody
Dictator is a
should be
great
able to be
movie.
whatever
Especially that speech at
political
the
leaning
end.
they wanted. Yeah, he thought you should be able to be whatever you wanted. You should be able to talk about whatever you wanted to talk about. That you shouldn't be having to worry about what you didn't say. That's what the First Amendment was for. Um,
What's that movie with Charlie Chaplin? You showed me when he was talking to his son, and his son's talking about how passports are kind of like threading the eye or trying to go through the eye of a needle to
oh,
leave a country.
the the King in New York.
The King in New York.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm looking up what year that came out. Yeah, and had his son in, and his son goes on this spree, and he's like, "Oh, what are you reading?" And he says, "Karl Marx." And he says, "Well, are you a Marxist?" And he says, "No." And he said, "Do I have to be a Marxist to read Karl Marx?" Yeah, and he goes off on a spiel. It's great. It's great. Yeah, but
What's Charlie
the
Chaplin's done
moment
him
he
doing
started
this,
doing
making movies.
talkies, he started getting blacklisted. The moment talkies were a thing, and because the Great Dictator happened.
Yeah, it's a good movie. Really good movie.
Yeah, so
It is crazy. Like he did silent films. Like he was like the start of slapstick, And then
yeah,
the moment he started talking, he's like, "Yo, everything's fucked up here. Here's how." It was beautiful.
yeah. I mean, we look at all the things that hobos have gone through, and there's a lot. There's a lot. There's just so much. Oh my goodness.
Right. We've been talking about 35 years, 40 years of history, and it's been 2 hours. We just
Oh
kind of
yeah,
started.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and there's so
And
much stuff you could have gone deeper into as well.
oh, so much of it. And there's a lot of history that's not necessarily hobo history, but is extremely adjacent. You can't separate it. So yeah, I don't know. Should we see if folks have stuff to ask?
Yeah, yeah. We definitely post some comments. Anyone has any questions in the comments? For Hobo history or anything we've been talking about would be great. But anything at all, we can just open the floor up. If anyone has any questions, feel free. If you don't have any questions, if you want to talk about how great not only I look tonight, but how great Abby looks tonight, that's cool too. We take compliments. Oh, the traveling symbols. Yeah, we can talk about that for sure. The old hobo glyphs. If you want to get into that real quick.
Hey, well, there's first I'm gonna start with saying there's like the Historical Graffiti Society. And they've done extensive research on this stuff. They're really the overall authority on the subject. So I kind of want to say that first, right and outright. They're the people who've done the most research on hobo symbols and monikers. Um, Hobo monikers have always been a thing. People in general have always wanted to sign things. You can find that kind of stuff from like Pompeii, people writing things like "I am here" on walls, right? It's just something we like to do as humans. It's like to mark our space.
Yeah,
That's just
definitely.
right. The idea of like having your own symbol and things like that, that itself has been around since about the Civil War. You can see that. There are like you can find old pictures of jail walls from back when, walls that aren't there anymore, of different hobos and travelers that have signed. The phrase is WBD, like that's westbound departure, or EBD, eastbound departure. Those have been used since about that time too, about the Civil War.
I didn't know.
Um,
Okay.
and back then, we're talking about steam trains, and so we had water towers, right? And we don't have water towers at all those spots anymore. There were a bunch of water towers along the rails, and you would have to get more water so you could create more steam as you went down the road. And marking on the steam tank or the water tank was a big way to show people who was where and who was going where. And they would put a date. But as far as like hobo symbols, like there being a language, it is most likely not true. And I'm sorry, folks. There are a lot of studies been put into this. Hobo monikers are real, hobo language is not. Hobo language is a really cool tall tale. I think people should still tell the tall tale and mark posts as if it's a thing. I'm totally down for that.
Yeah, let's make it
But
real. Fuck it.
but it was never really a thing that was used. Now there are instances of folks going into certain labor disputes, and you can find like markings kind of marking the way for certain things, like here's the jungle, you'd see a mark on a tree or something like that. But overall, like telling people where or where not to get food on a fence post wasn't really a thing. um
That's one thing I noticed before I heard your like the fact that they probably weren't real. I noticed the Romani glyphs. You know, the old Romani glyphs are very, very similar. So it's like, oh, okay, the old
right.
hobos must have taken those Romani glyphs, or someone just took them and made a work of fiction using the same style of glyphs.
Well, during the tramp scare, when we were talking earlier, when everyone's freaking out about hobos and tramps, the idea of hobo symbols was used as like, look, they have this secret language. That's how they're plotting against us. And that really solidified it, right? And then you have other folks, um, like A number one, who really glorified the tale of it, and has even been known to say in interviews that, yeah, no, I made up these in the storybook. But he wrote a bunch of storybooks about tramps. He was an actual tramp. He did live the life, but these stories aren't really real. He wrote this one, Coast to Coast with Jack London. He published it after Jack London wasn't with us anymore. Uh, there's no real proof that he wrote with Jack London, but he did ask Jack London's wife if it was okay to print this book, and she said yes. So I'm okay with him.
Not approval.
I'm okay with him.
The movie on A number one, Emperor of the North, another movie you exposed to me while I was at Hobo Camp.
Yeah, right. That's not really a true story. It's kind of a mix of a bunch of his different books put into one, and then set more in the 40s instead of in the teens when he was actually writing his books. Um,
Great movie, by
so
the way, guys. It's called Emperor of the North. Again, it's not based on anything true. It's just
yeah, no, it's
Hobo
not
story.
based on anything true, but it does kind of give an accurate look into what Hobo life would have been like in the 40s, actually. Um, that's exactly what a hobo jungle kind of would have looked like and ran like. That's exactly what would have been like if you had some green kid chasing after you. I mean, it was a pretty accurate portrayal. They did a good job on that movie. The soundtrack's kind of weird for the movie it is. It's very 70s. And there's a lot of really close-ups like this.
Perfect framing. Oh,
Yeah.
Muffin asked a question a few times in here. She's a big fan of both of ours. I don't have any favorite books on hobos. I haven't read any yet, to be honest with you. But Abby, is A number one your favorite book on like about hobos and stuff like that, or is it one that really stands out to you the most?
Well, if we're talking about history books, there's one by Todd DiPestino called Citizen Hobo, and he did a really great job. He did a really great job.
So it's historically accurate
I
and
wrote him
a decent
fan
book.
mail. But he's a modern historian, and he did a really great job on Hobo History. I do suggest reading Mother Jones's autobiography if you're interested, and Elizabeth Gurley Flynn's. She wrote two autobiographies. Um, Big Bill Haywood wrote an autobiography. Read stuff from the horse's mouth, is what I'm saying. Read the autobiographies of the people who lived it. If you want to learn about actual hobo-dom, um, I would start maybe with Boxcar Bertha. That's a really good one. Yeah, You Can't Win Jack Black is a very interesting look into hobo life. Yeah, You Can't Win Jack Black. And that's not necessarily about hobo dumb itself. It's about the hustle around it more. And these guys in this book, in particular, were doing some pretty naughty things. Hey, and some hobos actually didn't like Jack Black because of that. He thought that he painted hobos in a bad light. And that's the same reason they didn't like a certain hobo named Jim Tooley, who was a hobo, who wrote a lot of really risque books, including one called Beggars of Life, which was about hobos. He also wrote one called Ladies in the Parlor, which is about the red light district, and one about circus life, and one about boxing. And a lot of his books were banned in certain states because they were considered way too raunchy. And he was buddy with Charlie Chaplin, but he was a real famous hobo. He was a hobo.
So this is around like the mid 30s to mid 40s around there is when he was putting his books out.
When was Beggar's Life? When was Beggar's? I think earlier of Life in the 20s. Published teens and 20s. Yeah, 1924 was
Okay,
Beggars of
okay, okay.
Life.
So he was with Charlie Chaplin before Charlie Chaplin started speaking his mind.
Uh,
His
Jim
Socrates came out in
Tolley.
like 30s, right?
Jim Tolley helped Charlie Chaplin kind of understand that whole tramp persona and stuff. He kind of helped with that a little bit. He was kind of helped Charlie Chaplin with some of his PR stuff too. But yeah, a lot of hobos did not like Jim Tolley at all. They said some really terrible things that are that you can't corroborate. Like, I feel bad even saying it because you can't corroborate it, but you have to because it's all over their memoirs. But they called him a kitty,
Ah, gotcha, gotcha.
like he did terrible things to small people. Um, and I've never found any actual proof of that. Um, but multiple Bows have put it in their autobiographies saying that that's why they didn't like him, or one of the reasons. So, it's what it is. It is what it is.
Yeah,
Um,
like four trips said hearsay. You know, like people like to make up shit about people they don't like.
yeah, you can't corroborate any of that stuff. But you can't dismiss it either because so many people were saying it. So it is what it is for that time period. There's just no way to look at it, like find out if that was actually true. At least I
Right,
would
right.
know of a way. So, I mean, and there was a lot of that kind of abuse on the rails. Um, I'll pop your bubble about Big Rock Candy Mountain some other time.
Uh oh.
The real meaning of that song.
With the what?
The real meaning of that song.
See, I
Do
always
you
figured it
know
was like you know, kind of like a middle finger to people calling people bums and what we're really looking for, or what people back then were really looking for. But I'm assuming I'm wrong.
that? Is there any other questions? We've
Let me
gone over
scroll.
so much stuff. If you think of questions later, you can send them to me or send them to Troy. And maybe if you catch us on the red play button on August 7th, we can answer them then.
Oh, good. I didn't know the date for that. So August
August
7th, we're
7th.
doing this again. We're gonna be
And
on the
you
red play
too,
button.
if you want me to elaborate on something, you be thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I'm gonna write some stuff down for sure after this to see, you know, for things to bring up later, without a doubt.
what's the real meaning of the song? Don't do cliffhanger. They want to know Big Rock Candy Mountain.
So
Oh,
Abby, I got a question for you. Is it okay if I upload this to the Red Play Button app as a video so people can watch it in retrospect?
oh, I don't care.
Okay, cool, cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna do an event for the one over there. And I'm gonna try to get as many folks from the the Blue app over there. Um, since we can't say any of the words, but we'll be able to talk about some of the more bloody things within Hobo History on that particular platform that we can't say the words about here. Some of those words are scary for this platform. They don't like it.
Yeah, we got to talk like children on here, like we're talking to children as well. So
Yeah.
August 7th, you want to do the same time again next week, or you want to do it a little bit earlier, a little bit later?
Oh, what do you guys think in the chat? Should we do it a hour earlier, or are you fine with this time?
I think we've been at this for 2 hours. We started up at 10 p.m. Eastern. So I do think we lost some people for sure that wanted to be here, so I want to upload it as well. But um, this time's perfect. But then we got the West Coast too. We want to include them and not make that too early over there as well, right? Why don't we do a poll? I think I can do that with you in here. Let's see.
Yeah.
What to do? I cannot. Oh! I lied. Quick poll. All right, smiley face if you like the time, sad face if you didn't like the time. So we started today. It'll be right at the bottom. Right the can't point to it, but it's all the way in the bottom on the left and underneath the chat. Don't type it in, just click it. Smiley face if you liked the 10 p.m. Eastern start. Sad face if you did not. So we got overwhelming for yeah, same time. 30 to 1 so far. Cool. Real
All
time
right.
interaction is beautiful. I love that.
All right. So yeah, if you guys catch us over there, start if think about, go poke around the internet if you feel like looking up some of this stuff yourself. If you have questions that you find while you're kind of poking around, bring them with you. You know, I'll get together with Troy and we'll try to make it so um, that everybody's got access to a nice. Yeah, we'll make a list of movies you can watch, books you can read, websites you can access, and I'll just start making a running list somewhere. I'll start putting that together for everybody.
You could ask your people on the Blue Button app. I could ask my people on my Discord, and then we can just pluck them as we go or whatever. 'Cause
Yeah.
we obviously want you guys to be included in this too. You guys are sitting here watching it, but like while we're talking and going into it, it's kind of hard to stop the conversation, pluck a question and stuff like that. So I think we could involve you guys, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is fun. I'm glad. And thanks everybody for hanging out. Really appreciate it because um, I could talk about this stuff forever.
It's
And
much appreciated.
it's nice to have somebody to talk to about it because sometimes I'm like, I can't, like
Danny's
people
already heard
around
it
here,
all.
I just can't go into labor history suddenly. They look like I'm wacky when I do that.
Yeah, you go to the bluegrass festival near you. Like, hey, did you know?
Yeah, suddenly going off about some massacre that happened in Colorado.
No, I know me. I know my style. Like we were talking about doing this, and I'm like, yeah, sure, we should definitely do that sometime. If you never hit me up to like set up a concrete time to do it, it always would have been, oh, I can't wait to do that someday. So I'm so glad you hit me up. Like, let's actually pick a day to do this. And
Well, I'm gonna be hitting this stuff full force, the rest of this summer and fall. So
yeah, I've seen your videos kind of taking that change on here, going into more of history and how you feel about stuff. And I love that because you're a wealth of knowledge, and I think the more people that know, the better.
yeah, I'm sure I'm gonna make some folks mad, but I don't really care.
Even though it's not deliberate, you're just saying what you know and saying what you think about things. It
Yeah, I'm
speaks of
just
you.
talking about history. And I know that sometimes it makes people angry. History itself is really politicized, and it shouldn't be.
Everybody
But
wants to paint themselves in the best possible light and all that good jazz.
yeah, and a lot of it's just disingenuous, and it comes from both sides of the aisle. A lot of it's really disingenuous. You know, some of
It's
it's
history.
not. But some of it really is.
No, but yeah, thank you, everyone that showed up. Thank you guys. We promoted this for a limited time, say a little over a week, and I didn't even know how to make a video with it until today. I just figured that out today. So I thank everyone for showing up. Abby, thank you for just doing this in general. I need the education for sure, and I definitely have a lot of things I still need to unlearn. So definitely looking forward to doing it again.
Yeah, get your questions together. Everybody else too.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. We'll
All right,
spend some time doing that.
I'm gonna go find my dog.
Hell yeah! Make sure you guys follow Abby the Spoonlady before you guys leave. Like again, Abby walks so I can run. There was a built-in community of people that love traveling and train hoppers because of Abby, 100%. So if you follow me and you don't follow Abby, you're fucking up.
Thanks, y'all. I'll talk to y'all later.
Hi, Abby, thank you so much. I stood up for that one. I stood up for that one. That's how locked in I was. I stood the fuck up. You know what I mean? I don't mean to brag, but I sit on this fucking bucket and do lives for fucking 4 hours, 5 hours sometimes. You know? I was so locked in, I had to stand up for that. What's up, everybody? I need to get my ass to bed. Um, I'm gonna open the comments real quick. Anyone who wants to chat about anything that's not, whatever, anything at all. But I gotta go see a guy about a. I gotta go see this. I gotta take a piss. I'll be right back. Mute, and we're good. Will, thank you for all the comments during the live, man. Thank you everybody that was in there. What's up, Faye? Um, I know we talked about Hobo history here. We got through a good chunk of it, believe it or not. I mean, Abby could have went into any one subject there and talked for 3 hours on each one. She kept it really short and concise and beautiful for us first timers, including myself. I heard some of this when I was hanging out with Abby, but I didn't hear it all at once like that, so that was nice. Um, we're gonna do it again August 7th, same time, 10 p.m. Eastern, August 7th. I'll be promoting on here and we'll make a video on it too on the red play button app, which I think we're trying to figure out a way to simultaneously go live with each other. So like I'll be on my account, you can see her and me talk on my account, and on her account, see me and her talk on her account. So we're gonna do it again on the 7th. This time around, since we've done it already, we got a feel for how things are gonna go. We're gonna try to get as many questions from you guys ahead of time and then during and all that. So I'll make a channel on the Discord probably tomorrow, and you guys can go in there and drop questions in, and I'll pluck the best ones or the ones I think people enjoy hearing the most. On Abby's end, Abby has her Facebook. She's be doing that way. Yeah, that was a good time. Yeah, it was a really good time. I didn't know half that shit myself, or I kind of just heard it vaguely before, so it's nice to kind of concrete stuff. And with me not being super familiar with the subject matter, I think it was perfect because I can go and ask questions that people probably have. Like, hey, well, this guy's name again, that book name again, or stuff like that. Um, I really thought standing here would be a cool spot. Railroad tracks, fucking trains coming by. Every time a train come by, I couldn't fucking hear Eddie talk. And I'm like, this was dumb, Troy. Troy, you did something dumb. Trains are loud. You got to hear your co-host. You know what I mean? But you live and learn. I'm gonna take this whole live and put it up on YouTube. I'll probably cut this last part up. Fuck you guys, what I'm saying now, right? But I'm gonna take this whole live and put it up on the Red Play Button app. I'll probably do that tomorrow. I got plenty of power banks and stuff like that, so I'll probably do that tomorrow. At least get it down. It takes a fucking long time to download it from this app, and then I'm gonna upload it after a little bit of editing, cutting out this last part here, and put that up on the Red Play Button app. So I'll start doing it tomorrow. We'll see if I can get it all done throughout the day and just dedicate one of my phones to that. And we'll go from there. Yeah, I thought it'd be a nice touch, but it shouldn't have been. I'm only fucking 30 feet away from the tracks. Not even. Not even. I should have, you know, had a train in the background. Fucking cool, but maybe don't be right next to the motherfucker. What was I thinking? Next time I'll be on the train tracks. Why the fuck not? You know what I mean? Only one way to get attention on the internet now it is. I need to get my life together. You know? Hell yeah! No, that was a really good time. I appreciate y'all for hanging out for that. Um, I figured no matter what, there'd be some people interested in me and Abby talking about this stuff. And when you guys showed up, you guys were super sweet in the comments. We didn't even have any trolls. We had like one guy in the beginning, that's like wanted to focus on modern day politics when we're talking about Hobo history. One guy, the whole lot. So thank you guys for being so civil. Thank you guys for just fucking showing up. I was concerned about a few things going into this live. And the main thing I was concerned about was any disrespect to Abby. I told my moderators ahead of time, like, shut that shit down as soon as it happens. If you see it, like, get rid of that person. I don't care how long they've been here for. And I said the same thing at the beginning of the live. But everyone's super civil, everyone's super chill. So I appreciate y'all. Um, seeing some people that I've had blocked for a long time roll through the live was kind of interesting because they can get them through following Abby. But they didn't cause a problem. So. Oh yeah, Abby knows what's up. Abby's been doing this for a long time. I thought she hopped trains for a lot longer. She was hopping trains for a decade, which is still a long motherfucking time to be out here, while busking and performing and all that. And now she's doing the social media thing. For the longest time, she didn't really talk about history of stuff and her beliefs on stuff, and she's starting to now, and I love to see that. I love to see it. Ginger, I'm in Milwaukee, Umbra. Ginger, I am gonna upload the whole chat for those that couldn't make it. I'm gonna upload the whole chat to the Red Play Button app. I'm gonna try to get it done by the end of the weekend. I'm gonna try to get it done tomorrow, but again, I gotta have one phone dedicated. The only thing that phone's gonna be doing is pulling the footage from this app from TikTok, and then I gotta upload it to the Red Play Button app. So it might be done tomorrow. It might be done by the end of the weekend, but I'll get up there as soon as possible. I'll probably put it up in the Discord that I'm putting it up. It was a swell time. What up, Steelers? Then my regular Red Play Button stuff, we'll just do that next week, so that way I'm not fucking throwing everything out there all at once. I'm overwhelming myself. I can only imagine what I'm doing to you poor guys. But it is 11:17 at night, and even though I had that coffee, I filmed all the fucking day today. Had a very beautiful tour guide, Kelly, driving me around, fucking showing me all these places. So what would normally taking me like 3 weeks to film, I got to do it all in one day, which is beautiful. Beautiful spots too, and a local tour guide, someone that's from here knows what's up. But I am fucking tired, guys. I did that. So okay, I woke up this morning, got ready, packed everything up, fucking boom, hit the road. Um, then spent 6 hours, 6.5 hours filming. Came into the live immediately. Climbed my chubby ass up here to the live immediately to promote. Me and Abby going live. Took like an hour, not even 45 minutes to myself, which was me going in and promoting it more. and came back on live, and here we are. So I started from the moment I woke up this morning to this moment here. It's been platform oriented, and I had a fucking blast doing it. Thank you guys for showing up. Thank you guys always for showing up. But I gotta go to fucking bed. Hell yeah, Will. Again, thanks for all the cool comments in the live. You too, Lupo. You too, man. Good to see you, brother. I'm glad you were here for that. Of anyone I wanted to be here for that, I'm glad you were, homie. But yeah, I'm gonna go get some sleep and contemplate my life choices that led me to this railroad track right here. Which are the best views, man. Any of them, any of them. It all depends, how you look at things. But I need the fuck out of here, y'all. I appreciate y'all. As always, be good to be good at it. You too, Becky. You too. Everyone have a great night. And I don't care what I say about any of you. Y'all are great. You too, Lenny. You too. You too, Ginger. All right, everybody. Faye, what you too? Gregory, you're a W. All right, y'all. I'm out of here. Greg, I'm going to shoot you a message here in a second. Check it at your leisure. nothing important. I'm gonna ask you about something. All right, I'm out of here, guys. I appreciate y'all. Always be good. Be good at it.